No rest, no business. No rest, no business. When we work our way through the historical books of the Bible, those of you who are familiar with Bible, you know which books are the historical books. It takes in from Joshua right up to Nehemiah. Joshua to Nehemiah. Um, yes, Joshua to Nehemiah. Maybe Ruth. When we work through those books, we notice that there is an agreement there with what is expressed in the Pentateuch. That's the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We find that there is an agreement also with what is recorded in Genesis about a Sabbath day's rest. Genesis informs us that the master of the universe, after finishing 6 days of creative activities, wonderful activities, result of which he himself say the work is good. You look at it and you assess the beauty, the strength, the worth of what was done. After 6 days of toil, he rested on the seventh day. He rested in that day. He set it apart and he blessed it. Now we can readily see that what the master was doing was to set examples for humanity. He didn't need to take 6 days to bring a world into existence. If God be God, as we're informed in the scripture, and as many of us have come to believe, then he could just snap his finger and say, let there be a world, and everything would be in order. But remember that God is supernatural. Later on it tells us that God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. He tells us that he is all powerful, and he's omniscient. He knows everything. So he could just set a world in order. But he was very well aware of the fact that humanity was not divinity. Human beings would not be God. They would be following cycles. They would be following systems. They would be following patterns. So he was setting humanity the example of prosperous living. So he took a day one and he worked from there. Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. Then that was all completed. He entered into that rest. Now, there are those who will suggest that he didn't really order man to rest. There are many other things that man practiced today that was not specifically ordered. But as we say, the master was setting the perfect example for man's prosperity. And so he rested on the seventh day according to Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. And when we get over into the Pentateuch, we discover that the writer of the Pentateuch, and as I've mentioned over and over, whether late writing or writing when the events were taking place, but the writer of the Pentateuch, or writers, choose whichever you be, but they were pointing to events taking place at a special time in the world's history. A time when Israel would have been climbing out of Egyptian bondage, Egyptian slavery. So they were reminded that the Sabbath given in Genesis was still very, very important. We discovered that even at a point in time, not to keep holy the Sabbath day would be to die. The death penalty was there. So serious, so important was that day of rest that to disobey would cost your life. We also discovered that those who did not choose to follow that Sabbath rest, they would go without food on the seventh day. And we also discover that nature was in agreement with what was given in Genesis chapter 2. For during the week, if they would keep the manna, then it would spoil. The bacteria would be at work, and there would be a breakdown, and the stench from the manna would trouble their nostrils quite a bit. And we discover that the worms would be busy during the 6 days. But on the 6th day leading into the 7th day, when they were told that they could keep the manna, the worms were at rest. That is saying a lot to me. Treat it as a mythical story if you want to, but it was highlighting the fact that Sabbath observance, day of rest, was very, very important in Israel's history. The Genesis one is giving us before Israel, and Israel was to buy into that, and it would be very, very important for Israel. Now we climb out of the Pentateuchal event, and we get to the time when judges and kings and rulers would have taken over in Israel. In some cases, it is not spelled out in abundance, but sufficient is there to tell us that there was still high regards for a Sabbath rest, a seventh day rest. You see, there some people say, well, you don't have any record of David or Solomon or Rehoboam keeping Sabbath or observing Sabbath, worshiping and Sabbath. But if we follow closely what is going on, then we can only agree that it was very established at that time, and there was no need for them to be emphasizing it again. In the preaching world, and quite often in the teaching world, what is given great attention is what is missing, where we need to catch up, where we need to do something. But that which is already well established, it is not greatly emphasized again. But we have enough there from Joshua, book of Joshua, going all the way through to tell us that there were Sabbaths, different Sabbaths. You have quite a number of Sabbath or rest day that these were tied with the ceremonial activities, the different rites and sacrifices that would help them to remember who they were, what they were to do, and so forth. But we have enough there to tell us that the seventh day was still treated as a very, very special day. All right, when we go through, we have mention of it in the book of Kings, Second Kings especially, and so forth. But it's when we come to the book of Nehemiah, we find that something was going on, and there had to be a great reminder. But the Sabbath day's rest, the seventh day's rest, was special. It was important. It was something that would bind. It as a covenantal relationship there that would pull the steward or humanity in contact with the divine and with one another. I'm going to be, I won't stop to read the story for you. I'm just going to paraphrase, as it were, and tell you what was going on. You remember Israel, they were taken off into captivity. And you will find enough to inform us that one of the reasons they were taken off into captivity is a lack of attention given to the Sabbath rest. Two things were troubling Israel in those days: trying to worship idols that were not helping them. And the master of the universe had to frown on them and allow them to subscribe to their nothingness. As it were, they disconnected themselves from the true source of power, the true source of wisdom, the true source of knowledge, the true source of unity, the true source of love, the true source of mercy and justice, the true source of life. And within the Sabbath rest, one would find the connecting link to that power. So, yes, Israel was taken off in captivity. Nehemiah and Ezra, they were busy trying to reinstate, trying to get them back to the land that was promised to them, trying to get them settled down, trying to rebuild. So we focus a little bit on Nehemiah. I think it's somewhere about Nehemiah. Let me see now and see if I can tell you where to read. I don't have the exact chapter before me now, but it's towards the end. Nehemiah was busy building. But as he was building, trying to fortify the city, trying to establish the people in their rightful position again, he noticed that there were merchants coming into the city with goods on the Sabbath day, on the seventh day of the week. and they were causing the people, the Israelites, to go astray. Sometimes some people are very weak, and they allow their stomach to rule their minds. They allow the niceties passing before them to be so attractive that they fail to do what they ought to do. Even some people in their homes that find it that way. I've seen it over and over. There is to the man a nice, attractive, lovely woman, but you see another attractive woman out there. The attractiveness of one will not minimize the attractiveness of the other. So now he doesn't know where to draw the line, and he allowed that attractive woman to take him away from his attractive woman. And it worked the other way around. Sometimes some people have attractive, lovely parents, and they see a little thing going out there, and they quickly give up. So these merchants, they would come in with whatever they had, and they would appeal to the Israelites, and the Israelites would be buying, carrying out activities. And on the Sabbath day, they would purchase food and garments and jewelry and all sorts of things. Nehemiah was distressed over the matter. Nehemiah was taken back because Nehemiah knew very well then that if they continue in that way, they would disconnect themselves from the master of the universe, and their trouble would be all over again, coming over them, washing over them again. So Nehemiah took up the position of leading as he ought to. And he got out there and he warned the merchants. He said, now look, you're in it already. Finish off what you're doing. If you come back, and I don't know, but I like to read that little part very much. He said, if you come back, I'm going to lay my hands on you. Would it be a laying on of the hands like the man gathering the sticks over there in the Pentateuch? Or would it be just taking away the goods? Whichever it was. But Nehemiah told them, I will lay my hands on you if you do not stop. It must not happen again. And Nehemiah gave them a very strong warning and let them know you're breaking of the Sabbath. And let me pause here to tell you something. People who worship on the Sabbath, they're not necessarily legalistic. Yes, you have some legalistic people on this about their Sabbath observance and their obeying the laws. But this was not talking about legalism. It was talking about covenantal relationship. It was talking about a people in covenant with God, a people who ought to know that the master of the universe set aside a certain time. That time was to be seen as sacred time because the master of the universe in a special way would be with them. That he's with them every day. But on that given day, the family circle, the wife, the son, the daughter, the strangers within your gate, the cattle ought to be in a restful state. You know, when you're in that restful state, great things can happen. If you observe as I do, you will agree. I noticed one morning I was working with a certain gentleman. He's usually up He's usually alert. He's usually dedicated to his work. He's usually very friendly with people. But on that given day, I know for sure that he didn't get any proper rest the night before. Wherever he was out someplace and he was tired. And I'll tell you something. On that given morning, his behavior was pitiful. When he himself looked back, he was embarrassed. When you're tired out, when you have worked yourself to the point of exhaustion, you can't even think as you should. And on top of that, when a person asks you to meet with them at a certain time, they say, let's meet Wednesday at 11 o'clock. It's folly for you to turn up Sunday, 1 o'clock. It's more so great folly for you to turn up Saturday at 2 p.m. The person's being is in dedication to that given moment, and the person is asking you to be involved at that given moment. That's what it is. The master of the universe is asking his stewards, his chosen people, whether you be chosen before Israelite nation or after Israelite nation, he's asking his people to meet with him at a given time. Now, as we know in life, appointments can change. Let's say there's a delay in the plane flight, or there is a delay in the ship's movement, there's a delay in the motor car movement, or in whatever the transportation system may be. What we usually do is to inform, try our best. How some people get through some message sometimes, I don't know. When I was a little boy, the means of getting message from one place to another was footmobile. Get on our legs and we get to the neighboring district and we let them know that so and so is dead. And they know that within 3 days the funeral would take place. If you didn't collect all the information, another person would be behind you fast with the information. The funeral will be at such and such a time, at such and such a given place, and the message would get there. Those are the means of communication, but the message would get there. Such and such a time it will take place. And if there is a change, there's a quick follow-up. Get on your legs again, and you get there and you inform them. The master of the universe governs all of the communication skills, from tell it by mouth, get there by foot, to the age when we have, where is it now? I will show you my phone. Yes, where it is. We have these things, we can communicate any part in the world. Master of the universe is saying, come together. If there was a change in that meeting, his information would be sure. His information would come forth. So we're going to look down the line as we go along to see if he did change what he set aside to be holy, to be meaningful, to be a connecting time. Let them reverence my Sabbath. Let them find it to be a holy convocation time when you get together and lift up the standard. I was about to say a time when you big up the master of the universe. Those from Jamaica know what that means. Big up the master of the universe. He doesn't need our bigging up so much, but at least it will help us to remember that he is creator of heaven and earth. And because he's creator of heaven and earth, we must give due respect to meeting with him. Once told some people, we say now, when we talk about fear, some people quickly say it's not talking about the shivering fear, it's talking about the reverential fear. Well, let me tell you something. In that reverential fear, there is a certain amount of trembling fear when we come to deal with the master of the universe. We're not quaking and shivering on our knees, wallowing in the dust. But we, like the writers say, we come boldly to the throne of grace. But like others in the Bible, we fall down on our face and wonder if we can meet with him. Such is our relationship with the Master of the universe. And so he asked Israel to meet with him. And when we go through the historical books, we discover that Israel, or the leaders, took it to be very serious and important. And those who were not in line with what was going on, like Nehemiah did, asked them to get in line and remember the Sabbath day, the rest day, to keep it holy, because it's pointing to the fact that the Master created the universe, and that is his great desire. Be wise and prosper today. And if you have gained any little benefit from this presentation, please share it with somebody. Please touch the like button. While you're at it, if you want to hear some more, as we will do another one tomorrow morning, all being well, subscribe and be blessed. Thank you for going all the way through with this presentation. See you in my next video.